Did China and Russia finally just overtake the USA?
America has always talked Jefferson but acted Hamilton. So they've always had an industrial strategy. The big change today is that US competitiveness, first of all, it's not happening in a mercantilistic way that Trump was advocating for.
The most recent Wealth Report sees China overtaking the US as the world's largest economy.
China is the largest foreign direct investor, trading partner, and lender to many developed and developing countries. Depending on what day it is, China is the first or second largest foreign lender to the US government.
By one measure, what we call purchasing power adjusted GDP, China's already larger than the US.
And on that measure, China is absolutely nowhere near catching up with the US.
The US is still quite dynamic with a lot of innovation. So I think that the private sector actually innovates a lot. This can be the most advanced technology of the future, AI, machine learning, robotic, automation. But we have in the US many problems. We have a very divided political system. The US is positioned well to remain the leading economy in the world, but we cannot take our advantage for granted.
The average income is up, unemployment at a record low, and the budget deficit is still manageable.
Despite the war and sanctions, the Russian economy is still growing. So what's driving Russia's economic resilience?
So, how are Russia and China reshaping global economics, challenging tradition? What strategies has Russia used against sanctions to reshape its economic ties? And lastly, how does the Brics alliance challenge Western economic dominance? Picture this: a global economic landscape where the traditional powerhouses might be facing some fierce competition. Yep, you heard it right. In a recent twist of events, Russia and China are making some serious waves, and it's got everyone talking. So, here's the scoop. During a visit to China, Russian Deputy Prime Minister Andrei Belousov dropped a bombshell. He revealed that a whopping 95% of trade between Russia and China in 2023 took place using their own currencies, the Russian ruble and China's yuan. That's right, guys. They're bypassing the good old US dollar like a seasoned traveler taking the scenic route. According to Russia's Minister of Economic Development, Maxim Reshetnikov, from January to October last year, a staggering 68% of Russia's overall trade was conducted in rubles and yuan. That's a hefty chunk of change, wouldn't you say? And it doesn't stop there. Russia isn't just cozying up to China. Oh no, they're spreading their currency love far and wide. They've been using the yuan in trade deals with countries like Mongolia, the Philippines, Malaysia, and even the United Arab Emirates. Talk about making some serious money moves. Now you might be wondering, what's the big deal? Well, buckle up because here's where it gets interesting. The talk about ditching the US dollar in favor of local currencies in the global south isn't new. But 2024? Oh, it's going to be one for the history books, folks. That's the year when this whole de-dollarization thing kicked into high gear. So grab your popcorn and settle in, because we're about to dive deep into the fascinating world of global economics. Russia's been feeling the heat, and let me tell you, it's scorching hot. According to Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, they've been hit with a whopping 17,000 sanctions since the Ukraine conflict kicked off back in February 2022. Yeah, you heard that right, 17,000. It's like trying to dodge raindrops in a thunderstorm. Now, if we take a look at the map, it's like a who's who of countries giving Russia the cold shoulder. We've got the usual suspects from the global north, the United States, Canada, the UK, the European Union, and a few others thrown in for good measure. It's like a game of sanctions tag, and everyone wants in on the action. But hold on to your hats, folks, because this time, it's not just business as usual. Nope, these sanctions are on a whole new level. U.S. President Joe Biden even said they're designed to pack a punch that'll reverberate for years to come. It's like they're turning up the heat to boil the kettle, and Russia's feeling it right down to its core. Now, Let's rewind the clock a bit. Back in 2014, when all this mess started, it was like a powder keg waiting to explode. The crisis in Ukraine, the coup against President Viktor Yanukovych, it was like a spark in a tinderbox. And when Russia decided to cozy up to Crimea, well, let's just say the fireworks went off. From 2014 up until now, Russia's been playing a game of financial chess. They started shifting away from the US dollar, cozying up to the euro instead. The European Union became their go-to trading buddy, and before you knew it, euros were flying left and right. But just when they thought they had it all figured out, the hammer came down. In 2022, the European Union tightened the screws, slapping bans on everything from transactions with the Russian central bank to the sale of euro banknotes. It was like the rug being pulled out from under their feet, and Russia's reserves took a hit, to the tune of a cool $300 billion. And if that wasn't enough, the West started openly talking about making off with the loot for good. It's like a high-stakes game of financial brinkmanship, and Russia's right in the thick of it. According to the Russian Central Bank's 2022 report, it's like the hostile states hit them where it hurts the most, right in the wallet. They've basically labeled their currencies as toxic waste for Russian businesses. So what's the solution? Well, they've been cozying up to their pals in friendly countries, making deals in their own national currencies to keep the trade wheels turning. Now, if we take a look at the numbers, it's like a seesaw of trade imbalance. Trade between Russia and Europe, down by a whopping 70%. But hold your horses, because trade between Russia and Asia, up by an equally impressive 70%. It's like a game of economic tug-of-war, with Europe on one end and Asia on the other, pulling Russia in opposite directions. And speaking of Asia, they're not just dipping their toes in the water, they're diving in head first. Imports from Asia, especially from powerhouse China and its bustling neighbor Hong Kong, make up a staggering 40% of all Russia's imports. It's like they've found a new best friend in the East, and they're not looking back. Russia's not just trading in euros and dollars anymore. They're going all in on the yuan. About 60% of their sovereign wealth fund is sitting pretty in Chinese yuan assets, with another 40% of their foreign exchange reserves following suit. It's like they're betting big on China's economic future, and they're putting their money where their mouth is. Now, if we rewind the clock to September 2023, Russian participation in EU imports took a nosedive, plummeting to a measly 2%. Compare that to February 2022, when it was almost 5 times higher at 9.5%. It's like Russia's saying, thanks, but no thanks to European goods, as they turn their gaze eastward for new trade partners. Now, let's talk about the boomerang effect of these sanctions, because what goes around comes around. Back in 2014, some big shots in China were already sounding the alarm bells about the dangers of over-relying on the dollar. Fast forward to today, and it's like their worst fears have come true. With Russia in the crosshairs of those dollar-driven sanctions, other developing countries are starting to sweat bullets about the safety of their own assets. Take OPEC, for example. When they decided to tighten the screws on oil supply at the end of last year, the Biden administration wasn't too happy about it. They even threw around some threats at Saudi Arabia, warning of consequences if they didn't play ball. It's like a high-stakes game of geopolitical poker, with oil barrels serving as the chips. And speaking of oil, India made a historic move in August 2023. For the first time ever, they ditched the dollar and used their own currency, the rupee, to buy 1 million barrels of oil from the United Arab Emirates. It's like they're saying, enough is enough to the dollar's dominance in the global oil trade. And guess what? Both the Saudis and Emiratis are now card-carrying members of Brics as of January 2024. But hold on to your hats, because the drama doesn't stop there. In November 2023, the European Commission rolled out yet another round of sanctions against Russia, hoping to get the green light from its members by December. It's like they're playing a never-ending game of whack-a-mole, trying to beat Russia into submission. And let's not forget about the cost of all this chaos. According to recent data, the European Union has been shelling out big bucks for liquefied natural gas from the US. Like, way more than they used to pay. It's like they're getting hit with a double whammy, paying through the nose for fuel while their sanctions bite back. So, as the dollars fly and the tensions rise, one thing's for sure. The price of playing geopolitical hardball is getting steeper by the day. Now let's talk numbers, because when it comes to China and Russia, they're breaking records left, right, and center. In 2023, their trade hit a whopping US $200 billion, and get this, they reached that goal a whole year ahead of schedule. From January to November alone, they raked in over US $218 billion, a jaw-dropping increase of 26.7% compared to the same period in 2022. And the best part? They weren't done yet. They easily smashed through the US $220 billion mark by the end of the year. But it's not just about the numbers, it's about what's being traded. Chinese companies are swooping in to fill the gap left by European and Japanese firms, snatching up space in Russia's market like there's no tomorrow. We're talking hardware, electronics, machinery, you name it. It's like they're shaking up the old trade playbook and writing a whole new chapter in their economic partnership. Now here's the kicker. This isn't just about dollars and cents. This shift in trade dynamics is reshaping global industrial and supply chains, and let me tell you, it's not cheap. According to the experts, it could take anywhere from 5 to 10 years to untangle this mess and get things back on track. So, as China and Russia rewrite the rules of the game, the rest of the world better buckle up, because this ride is far from over.
The Russian military has begun a brutal assault on the people of Ukraine.
We can never match the sacrifices and the bravery of the Ukrainian people.
Today, I'm authorizing additional strong sanctions and new limitations on what can be exported to Russia. We've already seen the impact of our actions on Russia's currency and the ruble.
The sanctions are not working.
The Russian economy is growing.
Russia's economy has performed better than some of its Western rivals.
Russia's economy is projected to grow 2.6% this year.
Now let's talk about the big players on the global stage, because while the G7 might have been grabbing the headlines for years, it looks like the Brics gang is ready to steal the show. Just a while back, whispers started circulating about how the Brics countries had overtaken the G7 in terms of GDP, and not by a small margin. We're talking nearly 31.5% of the global GDP compared to the G7's 30.7%. That's right, the underdogs are now running with the big dogs. And while the G7 grapples with one crisis after another, from economic meltdowns to geopolitical showdowns, the Brics crew is plotting their breakout, their secret weapon, ditching the dollar and trading in their own currencies. But that's just the beginning. With more than 41 countries itching to join the party and 25 already knocking on the door, Brics is gearing up to give the G7 a run for their money. It's like a showdown from the pages of history, where nations are rewriting the rules of the game and staking their claim in the 21st century power play. The Brics bloc isn't just about economic might. It's about unfinished business, a quest for prosperity that's reshaping the global landscape one membership at a time. And as the world watches, the stage is set for a showdown unlike anything we've seen before. To watch the latest geopolitical news, watch this video here.